Good day, students. In this lecture, we are going to study about the states of equilibrium and define the angle of law. Basically, the states of equilibrium was already discussed in my previous lectures, so we are going to concentrate more on angle of law. Just to recap, the states of equilibrium, we have three such states: stable, neutral, and unstable equilibrium. In stable equilibrium, the center of gravity is below the metacenter, that is, the Gm is considered to be positive, and the Gz is the righting lever. In neutral equilibrium, G and M, the center of gravity and the metacenter, are at the same point. That is to say, the metacentric height and the righting lever are nil, that is zero. In unstable equilibrium, the center of gravity is above the metacenter, and in this case the Gm is considered to be negative. That is, the ship now has a capsizing wheel. Now in this next slide, I want you to go to this link and see the modern express at the angle of Loll, and thereafter we will continue with the lecture. Now for unstable equilibrium, the center of gravity has to be above the metacenter of the ship. What acts vertically down from the center of gravity is the displacement of the ship, and what acts vertically up from the center of buoyancy is the force of buoyancy, which is equal to the displacement of the ship. For a vessel to go into an angle of Loll condition, she not only has to be in unstable equilibrium, but there has to be some sort of an external force to push her into an angle of Loll condition. Now, as we have studied earlier, the external forces are of two types, natural as well as mechanical. Natural can be wind, swell, seas, and mechanical can be tug pushing or pulling, rapid alteration of course, and also the ship rising on a rising tide, and the mooring lines are taut when she is alongside the berth. So without these external forces, an unstable ship will continue to be in an upright condition. It's only when an external force acts upon her that the ship goes into an angle of Loll condition. Now when she goes into an angle of Loll condition, the metacenter, the metacenter and the center of gravity come together. The metacenter and the center of gravity come together. The center of buoyancy, which was over here in the original condition when she was upright, moves and is directly below the metacenter and the center of gravity. This is the angle of Loll condition, when the center of gravity and the metacenter are together and the center of buoyancy comes directly below the metacenter and the center of gravity. So, just to recap, M and G are together. In this case, the Gm is equal to 0, the metacentric height is 0, the righting lever is not present. Capital B1, that is the new center of buoyancy, is directly below the center of gravity. And in this case, the displacement and the force of buoyancy balance out each other. The vessel now will oscillate around this condition instead of the upright condition. She will never go back to her upright condition in the normal sense because there is no righting lever present. What happens here is that the metacenter, moves up and down, goes above G and below G, as we will see in the next few slides. If you remember in the earlier slide, we said the center of gravity was above the metacenter. So for it to come under an angle of Loll condition, the metacenter moved up to align itself with the center of gravity. Now, as we saw in the earlier slide, the vessel will now oscillate around this angle of Loll condition instead of coming to an upright condition. So, sorry. In the next slide, we see that the center of buoyancy now moves still further out, okay, and what is created is a righting arm or a righting lever. And because a righting arm or a righting lever is created, there is a righting moment that is created to bring her back. But this time the bringing back is not to her upright condition, but to her angle of Loll condition. Now, uh, at the angle of Loll condition, let us say she is at an angle theta. She is at an angle theta. And in this condition, she is at an angle equal to theta 1. Theta 1 is greater than theta when a righting lever is generated to bring her back to the angle of Loll condition. The center of buoyancy, which was here earlier on, has now moved further down away from the original center of buoyancy when she was in an upright condition. So what was generated is a righting arm, a righting lever, thereby generating a righting moment which brings her back to the upright condition. Which brings her back to the angle of Loll condition. So here is the righting lever. Displacement acts vertically down from the center of gravity. The force of buoyancy passes through the point Z and acts vertically up, which is equal to the displacement of the vessel. And what is generated is a righting arm which brings her back to the angle of Loll condition. Come to the next slide. Now, in this case, the center of buoyancy has moved from here and it has come to this location, that is, it has come closer to the original location of the center of buoyancy, and it has passed the vertical, that is the displacement that is acting vertically down from the center of gravity. Okay, so what happens now in this case is a capsizing lever has been generated, and this tends to bring the ship back to her angle of Loll condition. So in these last few slides, we have seen that the ship never returns back to her upright condition. Instead, she oscillates around the angle of Loll condition. A theta 2 is generated. A theta 2 is generated over here, and in this case, theta 2 is less than theta, which is your theta was your angle of Loll condition. So let's go to the next slide. And we see that a capsizing lever is generated, a capsizing moment is generated. Acting vertically down from the center of gravity is the displacement, and acting vertically up through the Z is the force of buoyancy, thereby generating a capsizing lever, a capsizing moment, which will bring the ship back to her angle of Loll condition. Now, as we saw in an earlier lesson, on the y-axis we have the km, and on the x-axis we have angles of heel. Until 15 degrees of heel, the increase of km is very small and very gradual. Thus it can be considered to be constant. After this 15 degrees, it increases rapidly to a certain point and then continues to fall rapidly. Thus, what happens in an angle of roll condition is the metacenter moves above and below the center of gravity accordingly. The center of gravity stays stationary, the center of buoyancy moves, and the metacenter moves. The center of buoyancy moves further out, and you have a righting lever, righting moment, or it moves closer to the original location of center of buoyancy, and thereby you have a capsizing lever and a capsizing moment. So, in the next slide, we see a flow chart. We see the flow chart of the development of angle of Loll condition. So in the first instance, sorry, in the first instance we have an initial unstable condition. When she is unstable and without any external force, she will continue to be in an upright condition. Should there be even a minute external force, as indicated by this arrow, the ship will go into an angle of Loll condition. She is acted upon by external forces. So what happens is she goes into an angle of Loll condition. Okay, from here we moved here, and from here we move to this point. She goes into an angle of Loll condition. Since the external force was, say, let us say from the port side, the angle of Loll is towards the starboard. Now, should the external force now come from the starboard side, the angle of Loll will be to the port. So in effect, what happens is the angle of Loll the ship keeps moving around from starboard to port if the external forces keep changing directions. This actually is a very dangerous situation. We should not allow the external forces to act upon the vessel from the beam, because we do not want the ship to flip-flop from an angle of Loll on the port side to an angle of Loll on the starboard side, and vice versa. So the best way to avoid flip-flopping is to get the weather onto the bow. The swell, the wind, the seas, etc. The ship should alter her course so that the weather is from the bow and is held over there. This will prevent the ship from flip-flopping from starboard to port and back. So let's just run through this. A ship having a negative GM will be unstable in the very first case. Then thereafter, all you need is a small external force to get the ship to heel over and come to a rest at the angle of Loll. As the angle of heel increases, the center of buoyancy moves out to the low side. As the vessel heels, the Km increases slowly as the angle of heel increases. We have seen that graph figures a couple of slides earlier. Thereafter, Km increases rapidly up to a certain point and then reduces rapidly depending on the size and type of the ship. So if you go through this, I have already explained to you, and we will go to the slide thereafter. Why do ships develop an angle of Loll? It's an interesting question. The answers being various. Firstly, let us take the case of car carriers. Weights are loaded above the kg of the ship without first loading below the kg of the ship. That is, you load above the center of gravity of the ship. In fact, in car carriers, you must always load below the center of gravity of the ship and then go up. If you load above the center of gravity of the ship, you are reducing her metacentric height, and she can go into an angle of Loll condition very fast. Similarly, when she is discharging cars, you must always discharge from above the center of gravity of the ship. You must always discharge from above the center of gravity of the ship, because If you discharge from below the center of gravity of the ship, once again the center of gravity rises, thereby reducing her metacentric height, and she can go into an angle of low condition very quickly. Now for container ships, we see that the cargo, the containers are loaded on top of lighter cargoes, thereby affecting the center of gravity. Now, in your first loading port, when the ship is completely empty and she goes to her first loading port, it is very easy to load heavier containers at the bottom and lighter containers on top. But thereafter, when she goes into the next loading ports in the rotation, you cannot have this condition being met at each and every port thereafter. So, in effect, what happens is container ships have a massive problem with heavier containers coming on top of lighter containers in from the second loading port onwards. So the best way to avoid that is to fill up ballast in your double bottom tank and to maintain a large metacentric height. Next case could be this can happen on any ship. Ballast exchange is wrongly planned. We all know in our present maritime scenario that ballast exchanges have to take place when the ship is in mid-ocean, uh, when she is 200 miles from land and having depth of 2000 meters or more, she must undergo ballast exchange to keep the unwanted maritime growth away from the coast. This exchange has to be planned very, very carefully and minutely at every stage, and in between stages you have to keep a check on her center of gravity. If the ballast exchange has been planned over a period of 5 days, please do not hurry to complete this exchange in 2 days, thereby risking the entire endeavor, the entire voyage, the ship, the cargo, and everything on board, and everybody on board also. So please go about it very, very gradually and carefully. Now we come to the log carriers. The log carriers not only load their logs in the cargo holds, but they also load on top, on deck, on the top of the hatch covers, thereby loading well above the center of gravity of the ship. And hence, when they sail out from their loading ports, they are having a very small metacentric height to play with. Of course, it is positive, but the metacentric height is very small for them to fool around with. Now, once they are at sea and it rains, not only does it rain, if bad weather, the sprays come on deck and the water comes into the logs and they start to absorb that moisture, that water, thereby increasing the weight on top, above, on top, that is above the center of gravity of the ship, thereby reducing her metacentric height. So log carriers are also prone to angle of loll condition. Next point is free surface effects. If you have many tanks slack, then definitely your metacentric height is reducing. We have studied that in the previous lecture, how free surface effects affect the stability of the ship. What is most concerning is having tanks with large breadth that are slack, since breadth plays a very big and important part in the free surface effect, the free surface moment of the tanks. Fuel consumption is from DB tanks. Reduction of GM due to an increase in free surface correction. Unfortunately, fuel tanks can never be 100% full. They are, as it is, loaded up to a maximum of 85%, so that there is some margin of preventing pollution due to any overflow or expansion of oil. So, to begin with, the fuel tanks always have free surface correction. And as the fuel is getting consumed from tanks which are below the center of gravity of the ship, the metacentric height continues to reduce. Now, errors in calculation is the next point, and you sometimes forget to indicate that some of your tanks have a slack, and therefore free surface effects are neglected or avoided. The next point is about ingress of water, flooding due to collision, firefighting. Flooding due to collision or elision, that means that the ingress of water into the cargo holds in, uh, increases the prospect of the ship going into an angle of loll condition. Since the cargo holes are huge, their breadths are huge, the free surface correction, if the free surface effects are also huge. Now, it is flooding can also happen not just due to collision, it can also happen if your bilge valves are not functioning properly, that they are leaking. That means the water from the sea flows into the ship and enters the cargo holds from the bilge wells. So it is very important to keep a check, to keep testing on a regular basis your bilge valves and to see that your bilge lines are 100% intact and that there is no ingress of water into the cargo holds from your bilge line. Now, unfortunately, if there is a fire on board in your cargo holds and you have to fight that fire, yes, you are intentionally putting water into the cargo holds to fight the fire. You have to, there is no option, there are no two choices about that. But what you can do simultaneously is, as the water is going down into the bilges from your firefighting, you have to start pumping that water out. Do not let the water accumulate in the cargo holds, thereby increasing her free surface correction, increasing her free surface effects, and getting the ship into an angle of loll condition. Now, how would you correct an angle of loll condition? First and foremost, you have to establish that the cause of the inclination is due to negative GM and not due to shift of cargo. Okay, how would you check whether it is due to negative GM or not due to shift of cargo and ballast on board? So how would you check for shift of cargo is, at the time of departure, you have a fair idea of how the cargo was loaded on board your ship. Unfortunately, you have to go and inspect the cargo in each and every cargo hold and see whether it is still in place exactly as it was loaded. If, if the cargo has shifted, then definitely it is not a condition of angle of loll, it is a condition of list. This chapter on list we are going to study in the future, in the very near future. So if it is due to list, what will happen is the listing moments to port or to starboard will be greater than the listing moment on the other side, thereby confirming that that the inclination is due to an angle of list and not due to angle of loll. Another thing to check will be your tank sound gates. These have to be nearly the same as what you had when she was in an upright condition before she took a inclination. So once you have confirmed that the levels of the liquids in all your tanks are the same, then you are sure that this is not due to an angle of list, but it is due to an angle of loll. It could also be an angle of heel. How would you check for that? It's very simple. You just have to look outside, see the weather. See the weather. If the weather is bad and she is inclined due to heavy wind and swell on your sides, yes, it could be angle of heel and it could be angle of loll. But if the weather subsides and the ship still does not return back to upright condition, then it is definitely an angle of loll. If she returns back to her upright condition, then it was an angle of heel. So the thing to do is first alter the ship's course to put the bow into the prominent wave. Taking the swell and the waves on the sides will, as I mentioned earlier, cause the vessel to flop over to the other side, and you will now have an angle of loll. If she was lolled to the starboard side, she will now be lolled to the port side. Now this is a very dangerous situation. We don't want the ship flip-flopping from one side to the other because of the weather. Next, we have to lower the center of gravity of the ship by emptying or transferring ballast from the top side tanks to the double bottom tanks. Ballasting the center DB tank first, if such tanks are available. If no such tanks are available, then of course you have only port and starboard tanks, then you have to start ballasting the tanks on the low side. Okay. If only two tanks are available, you have to start by filling up tanks on the low side, and also you start filling up the tank with the least free surface effects first, instead of filling up tanks with the greater free surface effects. That is because tank with smaller free surface effect has smaller breadth, and a tank with larger free surface effect has larger breadth. Large free surface moments are related to large beds. So you are in fact compounding your angle of loll condition by filling up tanks with larger free surface moments. So hence, please, if you ever end up in an angle of loll condition, always start with tanks which have the least free surface moments on the center line. Least free surface effects on the center line first, before you go to the next tanks on the low side. So let us take a case. As per the next slide, you have a ship like this. She is at an angle of loll condition. G and M are together. The D is somewhere directly below G and M over here. And you have 5 tanks. Tanks 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Tanks 1 and 2 are topside tanks and they are full of ballast. And 3, 4, and 5 are empty. 3, 4, and 5 are in the double bottom. 4 is the center tank, 3 is the tank on the port side, and 5 is the double bottom tank on the starboard side. For the sake of simplicity, let us assume that all these 5 tanks are of equal capacity. So I have taken it to be, let us say, 1,000 tons each, 1,000 metric tons each. The best and the safest way to go about reducing her angle of loll and thereafter bringing her back to upright condition would be to start emptying out number 1 tank into number 4 tank. Number 1 tank, as it starts to become slack, and number 4 tank, as it starts to become slack. Number 1 is emptying out, remember, and number 4 is filling in. So this was 100% full, this was 100% empty. Now both tanks are slack as the water from number 1 is being transferred into number 4. What will happen is, yes, you will have an initial aggravation of the angle of loll, because now both tanks are slack, thereby increasing her free surface effects, and the angle of loll will increase. When number 1 is completely empty and number 4 is 100% full, the center of gravity and the center of moment and the metacenter which were together, you will see that the center of gravity has moved down a little bit, thereby giving you a minor positive metacentric height. Next we come to tank number 2. Tank number 2 is also 1,000 metric tons when it is full, and tank number 5 has a capacity taken 1,000 metric tons, which is 100% of its capacity. So you transfer water from number 2 into number 5. Initially, as you are transferring water, number 2 will become slack, and number 5, as you are filling it up, will also become slack. So once again, the G which had come down will move up marginally and reduce the metacentric height. Once this is completely empty and this is completely full, the center of gravity, which was somewhere around here, will move still further down, thereby giving you a higher positive GM, higher metacentric height. Now, what do we have? Number 1 is empty, number 2 is empty, number 4 is full, and number 5 is full. What remains is number 3. You fill up number 3 from the C, and the center of gravity, which was slightly off to the starboard side, now comes back to the center line, and the ship returns to her upright condition and without an angle of loss. She now has positive GM and she is correct. So let us see some photos of the ships that can go into an angle of loss condition. Car carriers, container ships, log carriers, livestock carriers, heavy lift carriers, and any ship where there is severe ice accumulation on deck. How can that happen? Ice is going to accumulate, and additional weight is being put on top of the center of gravity of the ship, thereby reducing her metacentric height. So it is always very important to monitor your metacentric height. Of course, there is no known weight how much you can add, but you can make an estimate and see whether the ship is heading towards an angle of loss condition or not. Please note down this YouTube link and have a look at the video to recap everything that we have done so far. Now, I would like you to do for homework a condition where you have this ship with 4 tanks instead of 5, as we did earlier. Tank number 1 and 2 topside tanks are full of ballast, and tanks 3 and 4 double bottom tanks are empty. You can assume number 1 and number 2 to be 1000 tons each, and number 3 and 4, since they look bigger than 1 and 2, you can say that they are 1500 tons each capacity. So please work this out, and for your own practice, and you will be able to get the idea of how to correct the angle of loss in such a situation also. So with this, I end this lecture on angle of loss. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up, share, and also subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Good day, students.